Welcome back to Shruthi and Vishwa's world. Today we're going to be reading a Nancy Drew book called The Bungalow Mystery by Carolyn Keene. Copyright 1960, Simon & Schuster. Chapter 1, A Blinding Storm. Look at all those black storm clouds, Nancy Drew pointed out to her friend, Helen Corning, who was seated beside her in the bow of a small red motorboat. Nancy, blue-eyed and with reddish gold glints in her blonde hair, was at the wheel. She gazed anxiously across the long expanse of water to the distant shores of Twin Lakes. The Pinecrest Motel, where the 18-year-old girl and her older friend were staying, was almost 2 miles away on the smaller of the two lakes. Helen Corning, dark-haired and petite, looked at Nancy with concern. "I think we're in for a cloudburst," she said, "and Twin Lakes becomes as rough as the ocean in a storm." A few minutes later, angry waves began to beat against the sides of the boat. "Are there any life preservers aboard, Helen?" Nancy asked. No, Helen answered fearfully. Nancy set her chin grimly. Although it was only 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the sky was becoming increasingly dark. The pleasant summer breeze, which had been blowing earlier, was turning into a stiff wind. "It's harder to keep on course," Nancy remarked, gripping the wheel more tightly. As she increased the boat's speed to maximum, the craft fairly leaped through the water, dashing spray into the girls' faces. "I wonder if there are any raincoats in the lockers," said Helen. "Please look," Nancy requested. "We'll be drenched by the time we reach the motor dock." Luckily, Helen found 2 plastic coats. She slipped into one, then helped Nancy into the other. A streak of forked lightning cut across the sky, momentarily disclosing a thick mass of ugly clouds. The lightning was followed by an ominous crack of thunder, which caused the girls to jump. "This is terrible," Helen wailed. A moment later, the wind began to howl. It struck the boat with a force which made Helen grasp the railing next to her for support. Another dazzling flash of lightning illuminated the sky, and simultaneously a deluge of rain began to descend. Nancy peered ahead into the dimness. The shoreline had vanished, and the blinding rain made it impossible for her to see more than a few feet beyond the bow of the boat. "At least we have half a tank of fuel," Nancy announced, trying to sound optimistic. "We'll reach shore soon, I'm sure." "I wouldn't bet on that," Helen said nervously. A worried expression furrowed the young pilot's brow. The boat was making little progress against the wind. If anything happened to the motor, they would be at the mercy of the waves. A few minutes later, the rain came down even harder. The wind continued to blow a raging gale, and the waves seemed higher. The girls leaned forward, trying to get their bearings, as a jagged ribbon of lightning illuminated the path ahead. Helen screamed, "About!" Nancy froze with horror. A tremendous log was floating directly into the path of the motorboat. Her heart pounding, the young skipper gave the wheel a vicious turn, but not quickly enough. With a splintering crash, the bow of the boat struck the log. The impact sent Helen sprawling to the deck. Nancy clung to the steering wheel but was thrown forward violently. "Helen, are you hurt?" she asked. I'm all right. Are you?" she stammered as Nancy helped Helen to her feet. Both girls were breathing heavily. By now, the small boat was listing sharply to starboard. Nancy saw instantly that the log had torn a jagged hole in the side of the craft. Water was pouring in rapidly. "Quick, Helen," Nancy ordered tersely. "You bail and I'll try to stop the leak." She sprang forward, tore off her raincoat, and stuffed it into the hole. Helen, meanwhile, found a rusty can and began to bail. Despite their efforts, water continued to pour through the opening. "Let's shout for help," Nancy cried above the wind, but she doubted that there was any other craft on the lake. The girls cupped their hands to their lips and shouted frantically. Their only answer was the howl of the gale and the steady beat of rain. "Louder," Helen urged, and they screamed until they were hoarse. "It's no use," Nancy said at last. "We'll have to think of something else." Just then, Nancy saw a giant wave bearing down on them. She met it head on, hoping to ride the crest, but a deluge of water almost inundated the girls. They were flung overboard, and the motorboat sank to the bottom of the lake. An excellent swimmer, Nancy managed to get her head above the water almost immediately. Her first thought was for Helen. What had become of her? Treading water, Nancy glanced about. Helen was not in sight. "I must find her," Nancy thought desperately. "She may have been injured." Then, several yards away, Nancy saw a white hand flash above the water. With powerful crawl strokes, she plowed through the waves to the spot. The hand had vanished. Nancy made a neat surface dive. Opening her eyes, she tried to see through the clouded water, but to no avail. At last, she surfaced and drew in a deep breath. Clearing her eyes, Nancy was relieved to spot her friend several feet ahead. Helen was floating on her back. Strong strokes brought Nancy directly behind her friend. "My arms feel numb," Helen said weakly. "Guess I hit them on the boat." "Don't worry," said Nancy. "Just lie still and I'll tow you to shore." Nancy, however, had grave misgivings regarding her ability to accomplish this in the turbulent water. She needed every ounce of strength to swim the distance alone. Could she manage to save Helen? The storm had made the water very cold. Nancy prayed that she would not get a cramp and both girls go down. "Hold your breath when you see a wave coming," she instructed Helen as they started off. At frequent intervals, Nancy shouted for help, although she felt it was wasted energy. On and on they went. Helen noticed finally that Nancy's breathing showed the great strain on her. "Save yourself," she begged. "Go on to shore without me." "Never," said Nancy, as a huge wave bore down upon the two girls, smothering them in its impact. Feebly, Nancy struggled back to the surface with her burden. "One more like that and I'll be through," she said to herself. Just then, Nancy thought she detected a voice above the roar of the wind. Was it her imagination, or had she really heard someone call? "Help!" she screamed. This time there could be no mistake, for she distinguished the words, "Hold on, I'm coming!" Through the blinding rain, Nancy caught a glimpse of a dark object, a rowboat. If only she could hold out until it reached her. "Over here!" Nancy cried loudly, waving. As the boat approached, she fully expected to see it swamped. The boat swept safely toward the two girls, barely avoiding a crash, however. To Nancy's surprise, there was only one occupant in the boat, a slender auburn-haired girl of about 16. Twice, she tried to bring the boat alongside the swimmers, but failed. The third time, as the craft swept past, Nancy lunged forward and caught the side of it. She dragged Helen along, supporting her with one hand until she, too, secured a hold. "Can you climb aboard?" the rescuer asked. "I'll balance the boat while you get in." Nancy explained about the submerged motorboat and Helen's useless arms. With the strange girl and Nancy working together, they managed to get Helen into the craft. Then Nancy pulled herself over the side. "Safe," Helen said in relief. "I don't know how to thank you," she told their rescuer. "Are you both all right?" asked the strange girl. "We're not far from the beach. Otherwise, I couldn't have heard your cries for help in this wind." "You were very brave to come for us," said Nancy. "I'm Nancy Drew, and this is Helen Corning." The girl at the oars stared at Nancy with keen interest. "I'm Laura Pendleton," she said. "I read in the newspaper about one of the mysteries you solved. I may need your help someday soon, Nancy." Without another word, Laura bent over her oars again. "I'll help you row," Nancy offered, snatching up an extra oar from the bottom of the rowboat and wondering what Laura Pendleton's mystery was. Using the oar like a paddle, Nancy attempted to keep the boat on course. As she and Laura made some progress against the wind and waves, Helen took new hope. "I think we're gonna make it," she said in relief. "Oh!" A vivid flash of lightning illuminated the water. Directly ahead, through the rain, she and Nancy caught a glimpse of the rocky shoreline. "The rocks, Laura! Be careful, or we'll be dashed against them!" Helen cried out as the rowboat was tossed and slapped by the crashing waves. Another zigzag streak of lightning disclosed the shoreline more distinctly. A short distance out from the land and directly in front of their boat stood the ugly, protruding nose of a jagged boulder. I hope you liked this chapter from the book, The Bungalow Mystery. If you liked this video, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the bell button. Bye! Thanks for watching.